Hey guys, how's it going? Phil Monteleone, the book peddler, coming to you with another YouTube video. It's been a little bit, been very busy, but this video I'm going to review a book called The Last Bookseller by Gary Goodman. Don't let the title fool you. By no means is that guy the last book seller. Maybe the last of a particular era, though if you've followed my channel for a while, you'll see guys who have been in the business just as long, if not longer, that still carry on the trade, and young studs like myself that will continue on as well. So, but maybe kind of the last in an era in certain regards, but by no means the last. So I'm going to review this book, and to those who have followed me, I apologize for such a late video. I'll show you what I'm doing quick. I've been sorting out comics. This is the life of a used book dealer here. But comics is a new field for me. I have them all over the shop, sorting and trying to figure out, bulking them up, of what to do. So, I had an opportunity, went in, learning kind of a little bit of a new market. But I would like to thank my buddy Mook from Kentucky for giving me this book to read. Very enjoyable. And is there anything else I got? Yes, there is. If you haven't, I really hope you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Stay up to date on book picks, in-store, out-store, activity, business selling experiences, and videos like these of reviewing books from booksellers. It's kind of a new little thing that I've been doing, and I've been really enjoying it. You can always pull gems from them and learn a lot, and it can be very beneficial if you're getting into the trade or if you're in the trade, to learn how people operate in this business or how they did, and you can always implement things that can help benefit your shop as well. Another thing that I liked about this book, and I'm going to sit down and set up in a minute, not shut up, set up. It was very relatable for myself, and so this will be a little bit about also my own experiences in the book trade, in a sense, in terms of what he has covered and how I relate to it. So it had me smiling a bit, because I could definitely sympathize with some of the things that he said and how he got started and whatnot. So guys, without further ado, I'm going to get into this book. Okay guys, so let's get into this book. Here it is, The Last Bookseller, A Life in the Rare Book Trade by Gary Goodman. Goodman is a bookseller out in Minnesota, I believe St. Paul, Minnesota. And this is the book, and I will say I'm going to start by reading the first paragraph here of the introduction. Before I get started, I will say that this was a very enjoyable read, very easy. It read like a novel. You could probably finish it in a day. It was entertaining, and Goodman basically, before I read the thing, Goodman basically, he covers bibliophiles, book thieves and crooks in the business, which is pretty entertaining. Guys like Mark Hoffman, John Jenkins, and Stephen Bloomberg. There have been, I believe, separate books written on these individuals, specifically Hoffman, who was a forging Mormon documents. I believe the one book is titled The Salamander Letters, or Conspiracy, something of that nature. And he was selling it for big money. He was tricking the experts. Very interesting individual. The other there, Stephen Bloomberg, stole like $50 million worth of books. He would pose as different individuals and get access into private libraries and rare book rooms and steal the books. He's a klepto, but I think it took like the FBI like 10 years to catch up with that guy. But one thing that Goodman doesn't talk about is actually his relations and dealings with other book dealers. And I'm sure he had some dealings with some legendary ones, but maybe that's for another book to be written by him. That would be quite interesting, actually, but he does cover a lot of the different personalities that surround the book trade. And so it was very enjoyable. I definitely recommend it, guys. Let me read you the introduction, the paragraph here. Okay, quote, okay, so I know I'm not the last bookseller. People still sell books. But I'm one of the last of a certain kind of bookseller, the kind that for 600 years rooted around basements, book bins, and bookstores looking for sometimes rare books or more often secondhand books. They were the hunter-gatherers of the book business, the travelers and pickers who spent their lives saving books that might otherwise have been lost. They are now nearly extinct, driven to the ground by the machines, the cell phones, personal computers, and especially the internet that replaced them at the end of the 20th century. Well, Little shameless plug. If anybody's followed my channel, this is what I do. I scour these places. I go to private homes. I go to estate sales. I've been in different states buying books and selling books. And this is what I do for a living. So I guess I am like a dinosaur, but I do utilize media. We'll talk about that at the end to be successful in this business. So I have some notes and I have some things tabbed out here that I enjoyed. I'll relate some of my own experiences with Goodman. And so basically how Goodman got started was he bought a used bookstore, and he was it was a terrible buy apparently. Most of the books weren't worth anything. You know, he loved books, and a lot of people love books, but the business of book selling is so much different, which is maybe obvious, but not always, put it that way. So I actually bought out a storage unit about $15,000. I got laid off of my previous job, and I had an opportunity to buy this locker of books. And I always joke, I say I questioned my sanity ever since. I'm sure Goodman did the same. So he immediately had to start acquiring knowledge as to how to make a real go at this and be successful. So he was studying the A.B. Bookman's Weekly, which was a publication that other shops, I believe, would write into talking about what books they were looking for in their shops. So he was learning about desirable material. He was hitting up all the estate sales and flea markets and putting in a lot of footwork. And it does take a lot of footwork. And basically he says, quote, "Some of the most educated and honorable people I have ever met were in the book business, but some of the most unsavory and illiterate were book people too. Those who operated at my low level, and some I met as I moved up the ranks, could be strange and troubled individuals. Loners, survivalists, and petty criminals regularly bought and sold used books on the open market. The real professionals, the people who made a living at it, were the book scouts, many of whom I came to admire and respect. Anyone who could buy books and make money doing it was a wonder to me. A successful book scout needed a quick mind, an encyclopedic knowledge of books, and a thick skin. Book scouts knew a good book, meaning a book that would sell when they saw one, and sometimes would stumble on a book or a batch of books that would pay for a month's worth of gas and donuts or a new mattress for the back of the van. They didn't need to know, or even in most cases care, that Ulysses was a literary masterpiece or anything about Plato's theory of forms. They just needed to know that the book had a market. Scouts were a primary source of new stock for the larger secondhand stores, so the stores were dependent on them. Good scouts could, and often did, threaten to take their books elsewhere if they felt they weren't getting a fair price." So in terms of myself and what he's saying here, I deal with kind of book scouts in a sense, but it's more of a hobby for them, you know, or maybe they're thinning their collection, and so they'll come in and we'll work together. By no means are they making a living at it. If I was to classify myself, I am a used bookstore owner, but I definitely do a ton of scouting. But a lot of times now, as the more established you get, a lot of material starts coming into the door. Individuals call you to check out their collections and purchase their collections. So you don't need to do as much scouting, basically. Now let me see in my notes here. But it was a huge learning curve for Goodman, and for myself as well. You know, most dealers that I spoke with after I bought it and wanted to do this, they said, do not do it. And I didn't understand it, because my whole attitude was like, if these guys make a living doing it, so can I. You know, I had the confidence to do it. But there are so many different facets, and Goodman learned them as well when it comes to this trade, that don't meet the eye and the behind the scenes work. And of course, nothing can substitute the experience with handling material. I'll reiterate that time and time again. And it is a ton of time to do that and to get your feet wet. But like he said, and I can relate to this as well, these scouts, they didn't know that Ulysses was a literary masterpiece, and they didn't care all the time either. They just needed to know what was desirable and sold. To this business here, outdoors material, hunting, fishing, stuff like that is popular. But niche even farther, trapping material. That is the biggest, okay, for me. Maybe fly tying and fishing. When it comes to firearms, it's Winchester and Colt. Philosophers, it might be, I don't know, Heidegger or one of these guys, or Aristotle or Seneca. Knowing that is essential for running the store, a store as well, and what's desirable and selling in it. So you didn't need to know everything about the individuals or the topic, just what is popular. So let me see here. So going forward, when I'm on the road, I'm scouting shops for my own shop, the online market. So here we go. Let me see, page 24 here. He says experienced used booksellers could recognize the saleable books in this pile almost instantaneously, not unlike, say, a doctor who runs through thousands of possible diseases in a matter of seconds when making a diagnosis, but the sheer volume of material they had to deal with also explains why it took so long to learn the business. As Marvin Monlin and Roy Meter note in Book Row, quote, the typical bookman started in the profession very young, often as a book scout, worked as a bookstore employee, acquired some know-how, and finally found a modest amount of capital to launch a store of his own. While a few booksellers were genuine scholars, many of them were well-known only had high school educations. They were a mile wide and an inch deep. They knew the best books in a subject without knowing much about the subject itself. So that is kind of what I just touched on before. And, because of the advent of the internet and everything, whereas bookstore owners stuff used to have more control over the market, it has significantly changed. And it's very interesting because I guess it's good and bad. I believe Goodman, if I can find a quote here, he said, I know I wrote it down. The bar of entry, though, is much lower. And to me, it can be both good and bad. Here's the quote. He said something like, where a lawyer wakes up and he finds out that all his clients have a law degree now. It's very similar. Anybody can get on the internet and sell books. Whether or not they're going to stick with that is another thing of unto itself. Because of this, also when running a bookstore, like I was similar, I jumped right into it. I didn't study under someone. I wish I did, because I think what people are going to run into is going to be a lot more difficult to acquire a loyal customer base if they don't have confidence in you, specifically in the antiquarian and collectible book market. You got to know what you're doing and what your material is, and people will keep buying off of you. But in the beginning, it's very difficult to build that what do you call it? Starts with an R, or does it start with an R? Oh my gosh, it's completely anyhow. How am I forgetting this word? Reputation. That's what I'm looking for. A reputation, a good reputation. So sorry about that, guys. Brain, whatever. So to study under a reputable guy, say like a Randy Elder or a Michael Slicker, to be able to either take over that business or to start with your own and say, hey, I studied under this guy for 10 years. People are going to have a lot more confidence in you. So anyhow, let's continue on with this. Let me see here, this page. So he actually goes into the investment that it takes to start a used bookstore. I'd agree in certain senses, maybe, but at the same time, the bar is lower, as I said, and now you can kind of do it out at your home. It's a little bit easier, and I recommend people start a little bit slower in this. Of course, it's one of those fine things, is like if you can overanalyze something forever and never pull the trigger. Sometimes it is best get in there and figure it out when your back's against the wall. Maybe not for everybody, but most of the time, the money's actually in the real estate of what you end up going in on. And I highly recommend you own your building. I mean, to pay a monthly rent when you're just starting out, it must be incredibly stressful. I was stressed enough, and I didn't have to pay a monthly rent on this place. Thing is my material at this point is worth more than the building. Um, but it's but when I am ready to give this up, you know, I might get 20% of the total value of this. It's in the real estate. The book dealers and collectors that I know would say the same thing. So anyhow, let's keep moving on. I like this one quote that he has in here. Goodman says, "There's no such thing as a free book." So true. You have to, even if the book's given to you, you have to handle it, research it, you put it away, you bring it out. It's nonstop. So to have better organization is so key in terms of processing material. But either way you cut it, it takes time when you're dealing with books. So there is no such thing as a free book. You'll shift. He goes, I'll shift this junk around for the 100th time. You know, he goes, I always felt that every book I handled cost me money and storage time and effort, no matter how I got it. So, in later years, when people asked me for advice about getting into the book business, one thing I would tell them was that there's no such thing as a free book. And I'm stealing that line because it is so on the money right there. Now let's move forward to page, is it 42? Where is it? So he talks about, you know, his business and how difficult it was. And after 5 years, his store was still more like a hobby than an actual business, and that things were barely covering his expenses. He goes, I lay awake nights thinking of ways to sell more books. As I tossed and turned, I realized that the only people making money in mail order were the book search people, those greedy criminals. They'd buy a book from me for $5 and sell it for $25. But they were still in business, and I almost wasn't. Extremely difficult beginnings for most people. I remember, I can relate, being up at night, pacing my floor, screaming, I'm hungry, I'm effing hungry. I would come down here at 3 a.m. looking for something to sell that could make me $1. And I didn't utilize the internet barely in my first 5 years. So I can relate how painful it is. I would get very bitter. I see people living off the system, going, man, who's the sucker here? I'm trying to do this. These guys are out doing whatever they want, and I'm down here dying. You know, I'd be over at my parents' constantly eating dinner. I still do, because my mom's a good cook. So what do you want from me? You know, how can I not? But it is, the beginnings were so unbelievably stressful, and I can sympathize with Goodman. I know what he was going through, even if I don't know every detail of it. Your mind just wants to explode, and very, very stressful. I don't think nothing can really prepare you for it until you go through it. But anyhow, guys, mentally taxing. You know, a lot of people will be like, oh, it's great, you live above your building and this shop is right downstairs, you just walk to work. Yeah, well, it can definitely be Satan's playground. A lot of people don't understand that. I mean, working in solitude a majority of the time. With social creatures, we need human interaction, you know, and it can be absolutely mentally taxing. So that's all I'll say about that. Let's see to the next here. We're going to fast forward ahead here a little bit. If you guys are still watching, I really hope you're enjoying what you're seeing. I'm giving you some of my relations and just little things out of the book. But again, pick up the book and buy it. It's a great read. Goodman starts talking about the online sales and the advent of the internet, and it's undoubtedly changed the world of book selling. Okay, and he talks about how a copy of a book now that you can buy in Alaska is maybe the same as in New York. Finding those deals are a lot more difficult. A book that you thought had a lot of value in the past. All of a sudden, there's 100 copies of that book up, and it can be a real race to the bottom. More specifically for general publications, okay? And I believe what he would say, and what I've come to, is a lot of these guys will say specialize in a particular field. Like Randy Elder has specialized in multiple fields throughout the time. And that's what I'm actually trying to do. I'm trying to become a little more specialized, be known in a particular field. I want people to sell me those books. I want to deal in those books, and I want collectors to come to me for those particular books. Now, the general material does keep the lights on. I gotta say, it definitely does. And but the thing is like I said here, like making a 700% profit on a $10 or $50 book, whatever, is far different from a 15% profit on a book that sells for $2,000 or $5,000. So I like more of the idea of shifting into that rare book market personally and specializing. Nothing comes overnight though. It takes time, money, and discipline to get into these fields. And he actually has a title called Survival Tactics. And he does talk about how he came across a bunch of like architectural material that sold really well, real niche, real specialized stuff. And again, if you buy rare, odd, unique, I find it's very hard to go wrong. You're going to have a buyer for that stuff. Now, Goodman's not very optimistic, I don't believe, of how the market is going. At least that's the sense that I got. And he says, this book has been a ghost story about some of the last people in the traditional secondhand book business. My contribution has been the Arcade Street stores, Stillwater, and the Booktown tales. The story is also told through other people and places, criminals like John Jenkins, Stephen Bloomberg, characters like Melvin McCosh and Larry McMurtry, and booktowns like Archer City and Hay-on Wye. On the fridges of the quoters, book scouts and collectors rummage around in the basement of the human mind and brought things to light that otherwise would have been lost. If the story has a villain, it is the internet. When the internet was small, booksellers fed it all their secrets. When it got big, it ate them up. This once human business is now dominated by the machines that have made it impossible for traditional secondhand stores to survive. He says the logic and economics of this are inescapable. As much as some might want old bookstores still be around and swashbuckling booksellers to be out hunting books, they have lost the reason for their existence. They are no longer needed to find or provide secondhand or out-of-print books, and blah, blah, blah. So he says the traditional secondhand seller is over. It's doomed. I disagree. Obviously, I guess I disagree heavily with Goodman. And I'm sure, others would as well. I think that a lot of these older booksellers get so trapped into their old ways of doing business that they're not flexible and they don't understand how to pivot. The internet is why I can actually run a used bookstore. And I always say, if you build it, they will come. Every year I acquire new collectors and customers. People have traveled hours away to come here and buy books and continue to do so. If you build it, they will come. It is tough to find sometimes bookshops like mine, and people are very appreciative that they exist, and they will come out and give you business. Not immediately, it takes a lot of time, but you plant those seeds and they will grow. I will say one of the reasons why I started a YouTube channel was so that I could specifically show books on it, show the condition, have a relationship with the customer, a back and forth, send them pictures of it so that they can see more clearly what they're getting. Now, this channel has evolved from that. I do know a guy, his name's Brian DeMombro. Never dealt with him personally. He's in the Northeast, and that's what he does. And that was actually what I wanted to do. And again, it's developed into something else. And I do enjoy it immensely, and I enjoy all you guys out there that support me and watch my videos. But that's why I started it. And yeah, it takes time doing it, but it's very beneficial. It's all about providing an experience for your customers. And that's what I try to do with this channel. It's how I've tried to set up the shop for my locals that come in. And so I believe that it's still it is, I don't want to say very doable. It is doable, but undoubtedly there's a lot of different things that are affecting it. But utilize technology to your, to your benefit if you're out there and want to start a bookstore. Anybody can do anything they want. Are you going to persevere through the tough times or not? I mean, I've had my share, and actually, sometime we might talk about a particular thing that's happened within the last couple of years that has undoubtedly affected this business, but others as well. So, do you have the discipline and the perseverance to forge through, chin down, man, and punch through, basically? That's what separates people, I think, and successful people, and having the confidence to continue to go strong, in the will. So that's all I'll say about that, guys. I know it's been a little bit of an extended video, but again, I appreciate all you out there for watching this if you stuck with me. And here's the title, The Last Bookseller by Gary Goodman. I don't know if you're watching, Gary, but best of luck to you. You wrote a really enjoyable book. Pick this up at your local bookstore or that evil vampire Amazon. I'm joking. Don't get them from Amazon. The heck with them. All right, guys, take care until next time. I'll put another video out as soon as I can. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Until next time, we'll see you later, guys.